Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. The European Commissioner for Economic Affairs, Paolo Gentiloni, stated that doubts raised by Poland regarding the primacy of European law over its own national law has prevented funds from being transferred from the European Reconstruction Fund. The government is still waiting for approval of the National Reconstruction Plan, which is to include 23 billion euros in subsidies and 34 billion euros in loans. So far, the European Commission has agreed that 18 member states will receive money from the Reconstruction Fund. However, it did not approve the National Reconstruction Plans presented by Poland and Hungary. The Polish government recently asked the Constitutional Court to state that European Union law does not override national law.
The government should get a grip and return to a path of cooperation with institutions which have been appointed for these very tasks. The Venice Commission, the European Parliament, all of those which have indicated shortcomings in our rule of law. Correct them, and then we'll get our money.
Deputy Minister of Funds and Regional Policy, Waldemar Buda, emphasises that the procedure of adopting the National Reconstruction Plan is not related to other EU procedures, and the Commission has not made any decision to reject the Reconstruction Plan.
Rules relating to the rule of law or the mechanisms of the rule of law are not yet valid. We have an ordinance pertaining to reconstruction, and it does not foresee this type of situation. Therefore, we have a specific term in which the EU must make a decision about our KPO, indicate criticisms for which the deadline has now passed, and then to approve the plan.
This
is an attempt to exert pressure, right? This is to make us acquiesce. And we cannot do this, of course. And I don't think we should worry much about it.
The Vice President of the European Commission, Valdis Dombrovskis, announced that funds for Poland and Hungary will not be freed until the European Commission confirms that both countries have met European requirements.
This is a scandal that should get an instant reaction, right away. For instance, a statement that if we do not receive the funds, we can also withhold our contributions to the EU. We'll freeze the contributions that we pay into the EU budget.
We're
in a most unusual situation, which I simply call a legal bantustan that is in force in the EU.
Paolo Gentiloni.
The Reconstruction Fund is the European Union's response to the new threats and challenges caused by the pandemic. Its main goal is to rebuild and restore the resilience of European Union economies to possible crises. If approved, Poland could receive a total of 57 billion euro, which would be 23 billion in the form of grants and 34 billion euro in preferential loans. A presidential decree issued yesterday afternoon introduced a state of emergency for 30 days in 183 localities situated in a 3-kilometre strip adjacent to the border with Belarus. Andrzej Duda's decision has yet to be approved by the Sejm, which will meet to discuss the issue on Monday. The representatives of the left wing and the Civic Platform do not agree with the decision made by President Andrzej Duda.
We have a debt to pay as Polish society, as Poles, to practically all nations in the world, those who supported us in situations just like this. Introducing some kind of propaganda state of emergency in this case, we feel is devoid of any logic. It's far off from any real situations which are occurring.
The politicians of the Confederation, who have already announced their support for the regulation, have a decidedly different opinion. According to the government, 2 of the 3 possible prerequisites for the introduction of a state of emergency have been met, that is, threats to the safety of citizens and threats to public order.
Any responsible politician who treats his mandate in the Senate seriously, and of course we include our esteemed president in this, cannot hesitate in this matter. If the security of the country is threatened in any way, introducing a state of emergency in this situation is simply fundamental.
According to the regulation, during the period of the state of emergency, a number of restrictions apply, including a ban on organising and holding public gatherings, mass events and staying in designated places. Everyone in a public place must have an ID card or other document confirming their identity.
On one hand, I see that the situation is very serious, and what some are doing at the border, trying even to damage the barriers that were put up there, would justify such a decree. But on the other hand, let's remember that these things are all associated with serious limitations on civil rights. Media rights are also affected here.
Similar situations are in force in Lithuania, where a state of emergency was introduced at the beginning of July throughout the country. Also, in Latvia, on the 11th of August, a state of emergency was introduced in the regions bordering Belarus and in Daugavpils.
I really think this is a jest, contrary to what the opposition is saying, a jest not directed at the internal market. Here, the government doesn't need a state of emergency, but it's rather a jest meant to demonstrate resolve towards these attempts at destabilization of the EU that our eastern neighbor is making.
The same will deal with the presidential ordinance on Monday from 4:30 onwards. Abdul Ghani Baradar, leader of the Taliban's political structures and one of the movement's co-founders, will head the Taliban government in Afghanistan. Mullah Muhammad Yaqub, the eldest son of the founder of the Taliban movement, Mullah Omar, will also occupy a senior position in the government. Final preparations are underway in Kabul before the new government is sworn in. According to reports from Reuters, it will be headed by Abdul Ghani Baradar. Key ministries are to be entrusted to prominent Taliban activists. It is not known, however, whether the new Afghan government will gain international recognition.
The sooner the Taliban government is recognized by the international community, the easier it will be to communicate and cooperate. In the event of the country's political disintegration, we will lose this possibility.
In order to support the Afghan population, we will have to engage with the new government in Afghanistan, which doesn't mean recognition. It's an operational engagement. And this operational engagement will increase depending on the behavior of this government.
A similar condition is set by Germany. The government in Berlin is ready to resume the diplomatic presence in Kabul and continue humanitarian aid for Afghanistan in exchange for the fight against terrorism and the observance of basic human rights.
The European Union must very quickly develop a common position on Afghanistan. We must contain certain requirements regarding the political situation in this country. The new government should be inclusive.
China has openly declared its support for the new government, which has promised not only to maintain a diplomatic mission in Kabul, but also to increase humanitarian aid. At the same time, the government in Beijing has blamed the current crisis on the US-led NATO coalition.
The states that have interfered in the internal situation in this country over the past 20 years should not now shrink their responsibility and shift the blame onto the international community.
The Taliban inherited not only weapons, but also massive inflation from former authorities and retreating US troops. Afghanistan is currently struggling with the growing economic crisis caused by an unstable internal situation. It is aggravated by the drought and the COVID-19 epidemic.
The situation has calmed down. The scourge of theft has been brought under control. But now we're struggling with enormous unemployment. Many companies went bankrupt. Inflation absorbs all savings. I can't even afford flour.
The Taliban is also losing sleep in the Panjshir Valley, where fighting with rebels is still going on. Attempts to conclude a truce in recent days have been unsuccessful, as the Taliban refused to agree on the requirement to provide fighters led by Ahmad Massoud with 30% of the seats in the future government. Meanwhile, in many Afghan cities, there are spontaneous protests by women who demand that their rights be respected.
Afghan women have worked hard for their position over the past 20 years. We studied and gathered the necessary experience. Today, however, we were deprived of our power to exercise power. We demand that our rights are respected.
In official communications, the Taliban gives assurances that they will respect fundamental human rights and strive for women's equality. But reports from recent days contradict their words. Experts fear that the new government will introduce strict laws that will exclude most citizens from an active social life, but women will bear the biggest brunt. On the 7th of September, the 30th edition of the Economic Forum begins in Karpacz. It is the largest meeting platform in Central and Eastern Europe, where security, prospects for economic development and contemporary challenges in overcoming crises are discussed. The event will be attended by guests from over 60 countries around the world who will take part in 200 debates and lectures with representatives of science, politics and business. The leitmotif of this year's forum is Europe in search of a leader.
Z tego powodu, że w najbliższym czasie
Because in the near future, we will be witnesses to events that will change the political landscape of Europe in a very significant way. The elections in Germany in September, elections in the spring in France, elections which could occur at any moment in Italy. That's certainly the first element of the search for leadership. The second, also very significant, for many years, public opinion is identifying less and less with the leadership of the most important countries in the EU.
The International Economic Forum is an important meeting for the scientific community because it enables the presentation of one's point of view in discussion panels and allows for the joint creation of a vision for the future. As in previous years, the awards of the Economic Forum, Man of the Year, Company of the Year, and an award for the best non-governmental organisation will be presented.
This kind of face-to-face exchange of ideas, it's first of all more interesting for the audience, but it could also bring some more interesting insights, something like a brainstorming among specialists, in this case, for example, economists. Another thing are the informal meetings, the meetings that happen outside the official forum. This is an important element in terms of business relations.
During the forum, specific discussions are also made that affect the lives of millions of people. That is why the event has for years attracted leading representatives not only of politics and the economics, but also a strong media representation.
Every event such as this, that includes media personalities, people in politics, gives birth to decisions which are rather informal, but of which we're informed significantly later on.
The Economic Forum in Karpacz is the largest platform for meetings between political and business elites in Central and Eastern Europe. Since 1992, important declarations have been made there, and the opinions of the participants are quoted by the world's media and discussed in scientific circles. This year's edition will also be attended by representatives of the Polish government, including Minister of State Assets Jacek Sasin and Deputy Prime Minister Piotr Gliński. As announced by the Deputy Minister of Culture and the General Conservator of Monuments, Professor Magdalena Gawin, any project for the renovation of public spaces that involve unjustified cutting down of trees will not be approved by the conservation services. This new law means an end to the so-called concretosis in Polish cities. Pouring concrete is still one of the most popular methods of revitalising Polish market squares. The owners of many cities and towns find it more attractive than a lawn. On the other hand, residents are increasingly criticising the cutting down of greenery in favour of new investments. The Ministry of Culture, together with the Ministry of the Environment, will launch a campaign regarding the need to green our cities.
The contemporary city should serve its citizens. Trees are necessary. Trees are necessary for the people who live there. They're also necessary to be able to enjoy our monuments. It doesn't mean that we instantly lose our line of sight of the monuments, but I'll admit that I haven't encountered more approval for any action that I've made. Certainly on the district level, where greenery is being completely destroyed. This greenery should stay there.
There are plenty of examples, including Wieleń, where instead of plants, a concrete tree monument was built, while in Kutno, as part of the revitalisation of the market square, a large concrete square was built.
What Minister Gawin is proposing makes a lot of sense, to make sure that the lines of sight to monuments is ensured, but that resorting to concretosis to do it is forbidden.
As experts point out, when designing urban spaces, one should strive to maintain balance.
A large part of the Mazovian Provincial Park is in the Warsaw suburbs, the Kabaty Forest, and that's one side of the problem. But there's also the city center, and just like in any large city, we could use some more greenery.
Too few green areas is often one of the problems faced by residents of new housing estates.
The fight against developers who want to destroy our green spaces is crucial. As we see, Warsaw is getting more and more concrete. People see this, especially in the suburbs. I think the actions of the ministry could actually influence the situation in a positive way.
poprawę stanu miasta.
Flower meadows are increasingly becoming a balance for the ubiquitous concrete.
Flower meadows can do amazing things for our local environment. In major studies, they've even shown to be able to absorb various elements in the air that constitute what we commonly know as smog. They are critical to our environment.
Realizowaliśmy ze ZGGW takie badania naukowe.
Flower meadows, apart from their aesthetic value, contribute to increasing oxygen and air humidity. They also provide food and shelter for bees, butterflies and birds. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.